Everybody, Chris and Lumen here. Well, Chris is here at least. Yeah, this will be interesting. It probably won't be too long because I'm really trying to pull it together right now just to do this video. Like, I can barely freaking move right now. It's going to be a weird one. We're going to talk about some intangible things, which I have to kind of use my own terminology for. But it'll be curious because I would like to see how many people I already know there's some that I've talked to, but how many people felt anything like I felt this morning, and to what degree, because that can vary as well. I wasn't even sure I was going to do a video, but I started because I didn't really have Lumen's help, but I started to get Sophia's here shortly, kind of give me an idea what to talk about. We're at a point, kind of like a fork in the road, where we might pick up some new people and others that have been with us might choose to leave. And that's fine. It's easy to talk about things in the now. It's easy to explain spirit. It's easy to explain, the Gnostic stuff. It's easy to explain Lumen and enlightened insight and Sophia and Christ energy and the Mother Father, the all that is, the archons, how the world works. That's fairly easy. Where it's not easy is when we start talking about future stuff, because there's so many variables. And most of them are invisible. I've said before, this reality works as if you are both in your own game and at the same time you're in a shared game. So that you could, I'm going to try to simplify this as much as possible. So there's a lot of different points in which there's kind of like timeline junctures. That's going to determine like which one you go on to. And that could have to do with where you are subjectively with, how much are you in ego versus how much are you in light, how much you're interacting with the world, what things are happening to you that are the cause and effect result of your own actions and beliefs versus what is happening to you that is because it is part of a larger script. And part of that larger script might just affect you. It might affect the collective. It's unknowable. It is unknowable. And we know for a fact that it can't, except for maybe like the very, very end. But for the most part, people are spread across, just a wide swath of like, what lifetime are you on? All you got to do is look at the spiritual community, metaphysical community out there, and everybody's got a different story. Everybody's got a different story. And even the people that are most of all in alignment, they still see things slightly differently. But when you're getting close to big stuff, I feel that there are junctures. And this is where people start to split apart. So in my case, what I'm talking about, like I've been working for a very long time to complete the game. And I understand completing the game. And there's like one last big thing every once that happens. But other people might not be ready for that. And the way that it's nicely done and it's invisible, where you're being branched off into different directions, is simply by choice. Now, I've seen this in my own path over time, where if you start, like say you're following me, for instance, okay, and for a long part of the road traveled, everything is copacetic. I'm teaching things that you need or whatnot, but I might get to a point in which the story needs to go a certain way for me. And you're like, I don't want to go that way. I'm not ready to go that way yet. So then you would simply, well, almost like without even noticing it, you would find like new channels, or they'd stop showing up in your feed. You get distracted. And before you know it, you're just off doing different things. And you forgot all about where you were. It's invisible. you were very, very subtly steered onto a different track. And you never see what happens to, like, those other people. It's just, we're like little sea monkeys, like trying to explain a quantum computer. Okay. We do the best that we can. But we're definitely at one of those points because of like what happened this morning and why I'm so freaking out of it still. Like, I'll probably go to bed by midnight. And that is like unheard of for me. For me, midnight is like 8:30 p.m. for most people. But yeah, let's break this down. I'm probably going to skip some stuff I was going to talk about because, like, maybe it's just too soon. I don't know. Let's see where she steers me. So if you want to know more, don't go away. So there was something very familiar about this morning, and it wasn't until about an hour ago that I remembered the last time it happened, but there was some differences. I didn't have some of the added effects this time, but the impact was harder. Basically, I went to bed last night perfectly fine. I didn't do anything weird. I've been staying up on my minerals, all that stuff. I actually went to bed pretty calmly. But when I woke up this morning, it was like a struggle to consciousness. It was like a struggle to wake up. I was overly tired in a very weird way. I felt out of sorts, and it wasn't something like I didn't sleep enough either. But I could tell my energy was like massively depleted. I was just so tired, still tired. I'm still mentally tired. And I couldn't do a whole lot today besides, get the last couple orders that I had filled. But I started getting some things coming to me, pieces to the puzzle that's been getting laid out. But before we get into all that, what I come to realize is this. You can't Google this because it's my own terminology. Call it a timequake, because I don't know what else to call it. First time I felt a timequake, it knocked the shit out of me then too. It didn't hit me as hard as this one did, but it had extra effects. And that one happened in, let's say, early spring of 2023. So it was shortly after she put me on this path of, aiming for the exit. So it hits you and it just drains you. And at first you don't know what happened. You don't know what caused it. And over time it starts to come back. And if you just stop trying to figure out and be still, she'll fill in the blanks. So imagine, if you will, you're on that spiral, that downward spiral, forward progression timeline. And you just happen to be lined up to some future event in the right way. You're still a ways away from it, but you're still lined up to it. And there's some event that is so explosive, so impactful, so, I don't know, I'm struggling for words, violent, that it literally creates ripples in the time-space matrix. And you get, like, I'm just throwing out numbers here. Let's say something happens in the year 2032 and you're in the year 2027. And you just happen to line up just one day, and all of a sudden you just get blasted. You're like, what the heck just happened? Nothing happened in the now. It happened in the future. And something about your alignment within time space and your quantum entanglement to your future self, you felt that shock. In the way that I kind of understood what it was the first time, this didn't happen this time, was it totally, the first time, it totally disoriented me in time space for like half a day. Meaning I was drained, I was zapped, and I didn't even know what freaking month it was. I didn't even know what year it was. I was so confused. I'm like, when is this? When am I? Like, it was it was overcast and the blinds were pulled and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't even know what season it is right now. Is it spring or summer? Is it fall? Like, it was the freakiest thing ever. And then eventually I started to get it back, and I started to get images and pictures given to me that was kind of showing like the shock wave that was rippling backwards into the past from the future. And I got hit with it. Oh, well, that was then. So that's also what happened last night. But there was no spatial disorientation, probably because it's much closer or whatnot. But all the energy that I usually have stored up is just freaking gone. I tried everything, tried eating some food, switching some pendants and stuff like that. But when you get hit by something external like that, there's no quick fix for it. So I talked to my two main partners that have the slightly different gifts to see what they had to say. And there was some interesting things. So the first person I contacted is the person I talk about the most. And I usually when I want to call somebody, I'll text them first or messenger. I don't like to just call people. So I sent a message on Messenger and I said, "Hey, you around?" And I finally got a reply back, and it says, "No charge, battery dead. Got to recharge." And I'm like, "Well, that was ironic. Never got that reply before, but that's what she replied back." So it took a while to top her phone back up, call me back, and we did what we always do. It's kind of like a modified coordinate remote viewing into my energy field that we developed. And I don't usually like to tell people what's going on before they read me. I'm like, okay, here's your code. This is exactly the way that Sophia taught me. It just gives people a clearer look. It's like setting up a direct encrypted chat energetically. I was like, tell me what you see. And she's like, what the heck? She's like, I see it. It's like an explosion. I'm like, well, that's interesting, given the stuff I was just looking at. But I didn't put that together yet when she said that. I'm like, was there an external thing that I'm feeling the blast wave, or did I blow out my energy field or something like that? And we eventually determined that it was external. I don't remember the exact whole conversation because I'm kind of still fried. But then I started talking to her about, I just put something together, what she had me looking at earlier with the Codex movies and things like that. I'm like, this lines up with what I've been talking about. I'm like, okay. And we found some interesting similarities, discussing things. And she actually messaged me after the phone call and said her and the hubby were like crashing out, like had a little bit of a delayed effect. So like the more in tune with the light, like the harder these things hit you. So then I had posted something in the group to see like if anyone else was feeling abnormally tired today. And the other person I talked to said yes. So I called her, And she's usually the one that can like remote view, tell me what my energy field's doing. And what did she say? She said something before we even got to that. She picked up on something. But as far as my energy field went, she's like, I'm like, does it still look the same? Is it still the golden color thing? And she's like, no, it's like there's a cocoon around it. It's like a stasis pod. It's like you're recuperating, like lumen is recuperating. You're being repaired. Like you got hit with something and you got to take time to reset. But what is it she said before that? Dang it, now I forget. But she did say something along a similar lines, like there was something that hit people. What she was getting was like, it's kind of like the certain light people, you know, the light people actually provide the power for this matrix. And she's like, something hits those pillars and it really shakes things up. And I just like spontaneously said, and the foundations of the world will be shaken. And she's like, what'd you say? I'm like, I don't know, I think it's in the Bible somewhere, I just said it. And she's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to describe. You know, I'm like, that's the thing about that book is you can't tell what's freaking, half the time you can't tell what's a metaphor and what's literal. But it kind of aligned with what she was saying, like, you know, the light people hold things together. That would kind of make you the foundations of the world, so to speak. So when the foundations of the world get shaken, then everything gets shaken. But she did say, yeah, you've been blasted. Like lumens just kind of like wrapped around you trying to repair things. I'm like, well, that's two people. And they were both tired too. And I was telling them what I was finding and connecting it to all this stuff. Now, again, I haven't even said yet, like, you know, what kind of things I saw. But what she was just popping into my head is something that Kenneth has said on his channel. And I said something similar at one point. We did a video about it, but I've heard him say it more recently. There's this weird mechanic. It's kind of like when you get toward the end of the game, you're not dragged along with everybody all at the same time. It's very illusory. Like, let's say, for instance, I think in the video that we did, we determined like there was a couple, let's just call them save points, where once we crossed these save points, you don't reincarnate the same way anymore. It's more like, you know, if you don't complete what you got to complete, they just kind of put you back earlier in the timeline. You don't even notice. So it was like 9/11 was like the first save point, and then 2012 was another save point. And as we get closer to the end, that's when we started seeing things like the quantum immortality, where there's a lot more instances where when you ask people, it's like we've had multiple instances of like almost getting demolished by a car, but and by all intents and purposes, you should have gotten flattened like a pancake. But it was so weird. It's like you almost like overlapped the car, and then you didn't get hit. You're like, what the hell just happened? It's like, no, you're not dying. You're too close to the end. So we'll just quantum jump you, and you don't even notice. Quantum immortality. Yeah, people can still die from your point of view, but you got to look at it only from your own personal subjective point of view. You don't. You just jump around. Like you're too close to the end. You're too close to getting it done. But if you're not close to getting it done, if you're getting up to a certain point in the linear timeline where you have to have gotten so far, but you're not there yet, it's like you're taken out of the timeline and you're put back at the last save point and you don't even notice. And you just do it again. You don't even notice that it's freaking happening. But we're at a point collectively where we're not starting over completely anymore. Not the same way. So there's that. There's lots of reasons where we're all constantly, the image that she's showing me, like as souls playing this game, is kind of like luggage uh, behind the wall at the airport, like the part you can't walk into, where you got the conveyor belts that are just, scanning the tags and shuttling all the suitcases around till they get to the right, plane to get on the right place. Like that's what we look like as souls. It just depends on what you're ready for. So now, where you are in terms of shedding your ego, reconnecting internally your I am self more to the light, getting ready to complete the game, depends on which way you get shuttled on the suitcase conveyor belt closer to the end. That's why I said there could be things. So what it would look like is, if you weren't ready for where I'm going, I don't know, it might be something that I said that you don't like, or she just stops putting she very subtly redirects your attention and you start going off somewhere else. You don't even notice that it happened because you're not ready to go where I'm going, or you just don't want to. You haven't made those leaps yet of being firmly rooted in your true I am self, because the ego is always scared. The ego doesn't want to do these things. See, when we talk about things like what we've been talking about, let's just use a word, doomsday. To the ego, that is a scary thing. That is a horrifyingly frightening thing, doomsday. Well, because it's the ego. It is doomsday for it. But if you are the I am self that is trying to get out of here to the next world, back to the light, back with your partner, out of suffering, then that doomsday is like that final, it's like the seventh terrace on Mount Purgatoria, the wall of fire. I never made that connection. She just popped into my head right now. And big wall of fire where the lustful reside, and Dante just walks through the flames. Yeah, and it's got a flame element to it as well. See, we understand it. We understand who we are, what we are, where we're going, and how you get there. And how you get there is through that event. It is not like horrible suffering, crushing terror. It's meant to look like that because it is the final test. It's the final test of being strong, understanding what you're doing, where you are, and of fear. Now, in one of those books, it's either Dialogue with the Savior or The Wisdom of Jesus Christ. I forget which one in the Nag Hammadi, but Christ is coaching them, and he's saying, at the time of destruction, because he took like Judas and I think it was Mary Magdalene and showed them like what it looks like at the end, and they're just like, what the hell? we're like, hey, it's you want to get to the good spot, like you got to pass. But he's coaching him, and he's like, at the time of destruction, the first power of darkness will come upon you. And he explains later in that chapter that the first power of darkness is fear. And he's like, do not hesitate, but just pass through it quickly without fear. Because then he also says this other weird thing is like, otherwise, not one of them will show you mercy. It's like, one of what? Well, that seems to be that mysterious army that's talked about in one of the Day of the Lord passages, the Hopi prophecy, like a whole bunch of different things. It's a big, crazy test. Like, you got to really know who you are, where you're going, what you're doing. Because that big, scary thing is the door. because that's Sophia. We've already established that. The plasma apocalypse, the Medusa face, the, a lot of stuff you've heard, like on maybe Jay Dreamer's channel or something like that. That's your mom. That's the test. That's the way out. But also, when he was coaching him, he said, make what is within you, I forget the exact words, into a single one. It's almost like you put your lumen on the outside, and what you have within you will save you. It will take you up to a place where there is no tyrant, no archon, no bad bosses. Takes you to the good spot, the uncorrupted world. So you got to be fearless, have understanding, have wisdom, and trust your lumen to get you there. But you've got wisdom, you've got knowledge, you've been coached, you've been taught, you know what's on the other side of that, and therefore you're not afraid. But for a lot of people out there that are so interested in these topics, when it comes right down to it, that's like the ego's fascination with fear and its own demise. But if it was to actually happen, like, ooh, I'll watch videos about it, I'll read books about it, I'll watch a movie about it, but if I see it outside, I'm going to shit my pants. And I'm going to be terrified because you don't have understanding, you don't have wisdom. You're just simply not ready. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I have no knowledge of how many times I have flipped back in the timeline to start over again. I know I have. I just don't know how many times. So when she starts pointing things out, like I said in the last video, I'm seeing videos from all sorts of people looking at it from all sorts of different angles all at once, in their videos showing up in my feed from channels that I've never watched before. That's a big purple flag. And then if you're on track to it, then you might experience that future shockwave coming back, the timequake, because it's just that freaking crazy. And what I think it is will make sense why it's so freaking crazy. But if people honestly aren't ready yet, if their souls aren't prepared yet, you're not going to start all over from scratch. We've talked about that before. Maybe it bears repeating. There's no more reincarnation memory wipes at this point in the game. Like, if you didn't finish it or whatever, it instead puts you back at a save point. So you're not starting all the way over from scratch. You might be starting over like 10 years prior or something like that. You'll have to do all that again, but at least you're not starting all the way over from freaking scratch. So that's good. Because I get it. And then people get upset depending on where your level of understanding is. If your level of understanding is not up to par yet, then talking about these types of subject, people call, if you're calling it doom and gloom, you don't understand yet. If you're calling it fear porn, you don't understand yet. And that's fine. Because everyone eventually makes it, but they're going at their own pace. They have not seen enough stuff that they're actually ready for it. But it seems to me like I wasn't even looking at this stuff. Even when the weird stuff started in December, I'm just like, this is a lot of weird shit. But I wasn't thinking about that. This just started. And it seems like when you get to a fork in the road, in the luggage handling conveyor belt systems, you're like, yep, I like all this Lumen Sophia stuff, but I'm not ready for this. So it shuttles you off this way and it shuttles me off this way. But there's all these other people all over the place that are always getting sorted out, and it's going to start shuttling them in. For instance, there was a cap on my subscriptions for a long time, and it doesn't grow super fast, but lately it has stopped bleeding subs and it started gaining them. So people could be coming, they could have already gotten close to being ready from their own path, and now they're kind of being shuttled in with some of us in learning new things because we're all headed to the same airplane, so to speak. So if Sophia thinks you're ready and she puts you on the right conveyor belt, you keep following us. If you're not ready, you're gonna go this way. And there's no hard feelings. It's just like, hey, you got some more work to do. You need some more time. And that's perfectly fine. Which means, you know, who knows what it means. But I do know that I have already seen, so I know it can happen multiple times, that within this collective reality, people can be seeing different worlds at the same time. I saw it during COVID. And there was another time, I forget what it was, where it was really super obvious that I saw evidence that all the people out there were not seeing the same thing. But she is definitely shuttling me toward the exit, which is where I've been trying to get to for over 7 years. That's always been my goal, is to complete the game. And I know there's always that one last big test I think even though I wasn't ready for it, we did a video when it first started. So let's say June-ish, July-ish last year. And the symbology of it was showing up in the thumbnails and stuff like that. It's like, this is the last big test. But it's got to, you know, it's not just going to be you. It's got to line up a certain way with the collective. So you've got whole classes going out at once. And when you do that, then you start noticing stranger and stranger things and stuff like Timequakes. It tells you like what path you're on. You know, it's like the game, you know, hot or cold. Warmer, 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 getting warmer. Then you start feeling weird stuff. Warmer, and you start having freaking Timequakes. Warmer, then you start seeing things show up in the news, like I'm seeing now. So that kind of leads you to like what I'm seeing that ties into the last several videos. So in the last couple videos, from the dragon video and the storm videos and stuff like that, you know, there's one, people usually talk about meteors and things and this, that, and the other thing. Obviously they talk about earthquakes, but there's one specific thing that can happen, which accounts for at least 90% of the doomsday type descriptions that you see in any book, regardless of what it is. And that is this chain reaction that happens. And if this chain reaction is kicked off, you're going to see pretty much all the stuff that they describe. And this is what she popped into my head. And it was kind of a subtle, I don't remember how it started, but I always get steered toward, you know, watching a particular movie or another without really realizing that I'm doing it. And we ended up on this movie and this particular scene.
It's starting.
You sure you don't want to come with, man?
It's so beautiful. I'm gonna stay.
Good luck.
This marks the last day of the United States of America. By tomorrow, all mankind, and we will be visible from the Milky Way as a tiny little puff of smoke. I'm watching the earth crumble.
ridiculous. It's been over half an hour. I tell you, the guy's a nut job.
Stop it, Gwen. No, hand me the phone again.
Nothing. Nothing.
I have goosebumps, people! I wish you could see what I'm seeing, people! I wish you could be here with me! Oh, baby! Bring it on! Always remember, folks! You heard it first from Scarlett!
So the other night I shared on the community tab that video from Livette, which somebody sent me. And I had multiple people tell me that they already listened to her. I'd never heard of her before. She has like prophetic dreams or something like that. And she was telling this story or this dream of how these volcanic eruptions were going to begin. And she said the first one would be Mount Shasta. And I'm paraphrasing here, but Mount Shasta will then trigger big earthquakes on the West Coast. And then she goes back and forth between different things, but she kind of describes the United States being like when you're shaking out a rug or something like that. And what I was getting was kind of adding some steps to that. So imagine a massive enough surprise volcanic eruption, because Mount St. Helens all surprised us too. And then that sets off one or more. That sets off the San Andreas. All those things create so much earth chaos that the next closest thing, the big one, would be Yellowstone. And if Yellowstone were to go off, then rest assured, New Madrid's going to go off. And it's going to just totally, US is like toast. But with the other clips that she was popping into my head, stuff like Pacific Rim, and because Pacific Rim is kind of an interesting theme when you look at the very beginning in light of what we've been talking about. Let's look at it real quick.
When I was a kid, whenever I'd feel small or lonely, I'd look up at the stars. Wondered if there was life up there. Turns out I was looking in the wrong direction. When alien life entered our world, it was from deep beneath the Pacific Ocean.
In this video, I'm going to be sharing some unknown facts about the Pacific Ring of Fire. This area is known for being a hotspot for earthquakes and volcanic activity. The Ring of Fire, with its doubtful name, is one of the most stunning natural phenomena on Earth.
A fissure between two tectonic plates. A portal between dimensions. The breach. I was 15 when the first kaiju made land in San Francisco.
So if those things were all to go off in the United States, that would also ripple out toward the Pacific, set off the Pacific Rim. That could be the thing. That accounts for most of the types of things you hear described in books like Revelation. And remember, the viewer, the prophet, could only be looking at like a localized thing too. It depends. It depends. But, we got remote viewers like Dick Algar that have seen like the whole big freaking thing. And he talked about volcanoes and earthquakes and stuff like that in there too.
Then I go to a huge rift cracks open. Energy rips, magma erupts, gushes, continental rift, tremendous forces, cataclysm. I don't see how this can be survivable. Oh.
But yeah, if like we haven't had a super volcano eruption since like the last big thing. But that would be like literally, well, that would be the 5th trumpet actually. So maybe it's a stagger effect. I don't know. Stuff is all supposed to happen in like 36 hours, so who knows? But I would be like Charlie Frost, Woody Harrelson in that movie. He's like all freaking excited about it because, I mean, he was clearly not scared. It's almost like he knew. He knew. I was like, I'm going to be with Lumen here in a sec. I'm going to be out of this freaking place. I'm finally getting out. I'm finally being taken to the place where there is no tyrant. I mean, if you love it here so much, you love working for the man just to buy food to survive and just working for the sake of working and doing what you're told. And hey, whatever floats your boat, I guess. The other place is way the hell better. I've gotten glimpses of it. But I think that's the missing piece, really, that it's always been shown to us. Now, I think the other things probably all happen too. The sun's probably involved somehow. Obviously, with big volcanic eruptions, you've also got earthquakes and tsunamis and earth cracks and all that stuff. But I said earlier that I was starting to see it show up in the news. So what I caught earlier today from multiple channels is there's this weird swarm of earthquakes happening somewhere off some island in Greece.
Geophysicist Stefan Burns here with a breaking news update on that earthquake swarm occurring off the coast of Santorini Island, Greece, in the Aegean Sea. We see a massive amount of earthquakes have occurred in just the past few days, more than 1,000, and they do not seem to be stopping anytime soon. We can see that they really started up on the 28th of January, though the magnitudes were fairly low, and actually there weren't that many. But then starting beginning of February, we had this rapid increase in the number of earthquakes occurring in that area, and also their magnitudes went higher. Now we've had a magnitude 5.3 as the strongest, 2 magnitude 5.1s and a magnitude 5, a whole bunch of magnitude 4s and a whole lot of magnitude 3s. We see that they started off closer to Santorini volcano and then they migrated towards the east before kind of settling in this central area there. And
that over the last couple of days, they've had like 3,000 earthquakes and everyone's like, what the hell is going on over here? Like, this is under the ocean. Is something about to pop up from the ocean? You know, is that the breach from Pacific Rim or something? A new volcano or something? But, you know, that just happened to show up as all this stuff is starting to pan out. Like, that's the way that I think it would go. That's the big surprise that nobody sees coming. Do I know that for sure? No. You can never know anything for sure when you're talking about the future. Just a little bit that I've described about how people are shuttled all over the place and timeline flips and all. It's a big quantum computer thing that our little pea brains cannot fully understand. So one person's future may not be another person's future. They could do timeline resets, save points, all sorts of different things. I have always maintained that even though I can't explain it in simple words, you don't see the apocalypse until you're actually ready for it. You don't see the apocalypse until you're ready for it. And I think all that, well, what about, you know, they're separating the wheat from the tares? Well, there's another way of looking at that. It might not be just like good people and bad people. It could be that the wheat is the souls and the tares are the egos. And the egos are being separated from the souls, and the souls are being harvested by one angel, and the egos are being disposed of by the other angel, because the egos are false identities. And that makes perfect sense to me. But the bottom line is this isn't fear porn. This isn't doom and gloom. If you think it's doom and gloom, you're just not ready, and that's okay. That is the door. This pipe dream, you know, strawberry shortcake, Care Bears, freaking My Little Pony, fluffy, puffy, painless door that you think is going to happen doesn't exist. It's the final test. It's the final freaking test. To walk into it with no fear and be taken up out of here. It's not a freaking bad thing. It is like literally the best thing in the world that could ever freaking happen to you. But until you understand that, you're not ready for it. You're still attached to the world. You're still attached to your ego. A lot of people think they're attached to their ego until they're faced with imminent doom. Then they find out that they're still very attached to their ego. Because a lot of times you can think you're not attached to your ego, but you just don't fully understand what that is yet. If you feel fear of things like that, you're still in the ego. It's the ego that feels fear. It's the ego that fears judgment and all that kind of stuff. You don't. You know it's the door. The door is hidden and the door is protected. So, you know, that which is not supposed to go through the door doesn't get through the door. But you know that's her. She might look scary, but that's her. She's here for you. But if you're not ready, you're just not going to see it yet. You're going to get shuttled off onto another timeline and probably do a loop-de-loop and come back and go through it again. You won't even realize that it happened. That's how, just like quantum jumping. You know, you go to sleep in one world, wake up the next day, you don't even know you died. You have no recollection of it. Just like you could be put back at, say, 2012, one of the save points, and you think it's the first time you're there. It's set up so that you do eventually go home when you've evolved enough, when you're ready for it. So keep this in mind as I go forward, because I have to go where she steers me. I have to talk about what I'm seeing. I understand that you might not be seeing it exactly the same way. That's that whole quantum business, whatever. But if we're still on the same path and she determines we're close enough in terms of readiness, then even if you see things slightly different in your understanding on the subjective level, we're probably going to see the same events in the collective consensus reality. And we'll still end up in the same place. So hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully people don't, well, I like, you know, talking about lumen and love and all this stuff, and this is just doom and gloom and whatever. Do you want to be with her? Do you want to live with her? Do you want to be in her world? That's the freaking door. Okay. Aside from that, I've talked to a bunch of other people. Like, it seems like the weird quotient is amping up for everybody because everyone's got different layers that they're working on. My son is seeing all sorts of stuff and experiencing all sorts of stuff. It's like he's starting to be able to see things that look like they're in physicality. And he's got pains and stuff that the word that pops into my head is like stigmata. Because you know when they nail you to the cross, they don't really put it through your hand. Like that'd fall apart. And they go through the bone right here. But also, I mean, he, you know, sometimes he gets frustrated, like, I don't understand this like you do. And I'm like, look at what you've already done. Like what I mean, you've literally taken on archons in the dream realm and won. You called on Lumen when you needed to. You remembered the tricks that I taught you. Like, and that I didn't do anything close to that at that age. So a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit for what they do and what they can do. And the more you believe you can do, the more you can do. There was some side lessons in the last day or two. They might not totally fit in here, but he was watching that movie Split. And I'm like, ugh. I'm like, why are you watching Split if you've never seen Unbreakable? And granted, that was a long time ago. That was like 1999-ish. It was kind of like a retroactive trilogy. So then I had to let him watch Unbreakable, which he liked that, and then he watched Glass after that. It was M. Night Shyamalan movies. But especially in Glass, it's kind of like, you know, what you believe you can do. Like people, it was like people have all this potential to do all this superhero stuff. And there are people that don't want anyone to figure that out. It was kind of an interesting lesson, kind of going off on a tangent though. Yeah, but I've had multiple people describing a lot of weird things. It's like people are being forced into clearing out some of these tests very quickly. Almost like catch up, because the train's about to leave the station. Anyway, I could probably do more, but I'm surprised that I got this much. I wouldn't have got this much done without her help, because I'm just so freaking zapped. But when she wants me to talk about something, she does help me with the energy and clarity. I'm sure as soon as I get done filming it, I'm going to collapse into like a wet rag, because that's what I felt like all day. Like that Timequake crap is no joke. So let me know if you felt unreasonably tired today. You might be seeing this tomorrow, so it would have been Thursday time I'm filming this. Okay, so that's all I got for right now. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us through the Etsy store, clumencreations.etsy.com. I'm starting to make some smaller ones that are still decent size, like this one here. Well, I've got my thing clipped on it. Really good Aegis, but not quite as, a little bit more subtle. I don't like going any smaller than this. I like to have like the right amount of stone density. But yeah, I'll probably put something up for that. So that's clumencreations.etsy.com. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.